Paul, no. You need to find Ash. It took her. It took. Growling, moaning, no. No, 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 no. Ah. Ripping flesh and snapping bones, oh God. Question mark, God. There is not. Call disconnected. I shut the phone off and watched Helen load the rest of the equipment into the truck. I hopped in the driver's seat and waited for her to get in. She quickly, yet quietly hopped into the truck and we were off. I made way to the campsite Paul and Ash were staying, as I had to know for sure what happened. Helen seemed confused as to why we were at a campsite. Helen looks over to me, why are we at a campsite? Me, I got a call from a camper. One sounded like they got hurt. The other is missing. Helen, well, I think we should leave it to the police. Me, we are responsible for their safety as much as our own. Opens truck door if you see anything. Anything, then honk the horn or shout at me. Steps out of truck and walks over to the tent. The tent had been ripped apart into ribbons. There was no sign of either Paul or Ash, so I kept looking. I saw their vehicle and approached. In the back of my mind I believed that I would either be attacked or find Paul's corpse. I walked with bated breath when I heard a crunch from under my boot, shards of glass cracked under my boot. When I got close enough to the vehicle I turned away out of disgust. In the car door was Paul's mangled corpse, hanging out of the window. His hands had been either bitten or ripped off, his scalp partially removed, and his spine was exposed. I turned around and fast walked away when honk. 2x I ran to the truck and Helen was screaming for me to get in. I could hear something chasing me. Perhaps the same thing that killed Paul. I flung the door open and gunned it out of the campsite. Helen was watching behind us and hyperventilating. Me, is it still chasing us? Helen turns around, no. No, it's gone. It's gone. Me, thank you for warning me. I owe you one. Helen, don't worry about it. We should probably make our way to the beach house. Me, agreed. We drive for several minutes till we reach the beach house. It was a large cabin with 2 floors and a garage. It was originally the Rangers' quarters, but was turned into a rental because of requests to rent it during the busy season. Helen hopped out of the truck and began punching in the combination to the garage door. Once it was open I parked inside and Helen closed the door. Helen and I began the unpacking process. After a few minutes of unpacking we decided to eat dinner, ramen and soda. We laughed about it since we had gone to the same university and have eaten a meal too similar to the one we had in front of us. It felt nice to have a moment of normalcy, but just as I was about to let my guard down, there was a loud knocking on the door. Helen froze up and looked at me out of fear. Me, Helen, let's get upstairs and hide out. Helen, it's Brandon. Me, how do you know it's him? Helen grabs my hand and leads me to the staircase. You need to hide now. Me, no way. It's probably a thing or something mimicking his voice. Brandon knocks on door louder. Helen, open the fucking door now. Helen turns to me and kisses my cheek. I'll be fine, just go. I slowly climbed the stairs as Helen made her way to the door. Once I reached the top, I heard the door open and Brandon began speaking. Brandon, about fucking time. Why did you leave the nest? Helen, I left because I was attacked by a fucking creature, Brandon. Brandon laughs, well. Now you are going to pay the price. After all you did snitch to my wife about our. Helen, don't you dare remind me. I know what I did and I did it out of desperation to get more money. Brandon, to help your dying mother, because that will help a dying bitch. Didn't she die anyway? You betrayed me. Helen, no, you used me in my desperation for money. Now you expect me to just follow along with your rules. Brandon, because I know I can't rely on Alex. That bastard would have left the moment I told him about the things in the park. Helen scoffs because you forced him to sign a contract to stay another 6 months with an incentive of giving him a raise. By the way, you promised both of us a raise but haven't bothered to give it to us. Brandon, if he doesn't like it here he should have left. Same for you. Thump. Everyone went silent as the thump came from the roof. Fearing that I may be caught by Brandon I began to sneak around. Brandon, stupid bitch. You didn't check the house. Begins to go upstairs. Helen, we did. Brandon, we? Stops and turns around to face Helen. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse. Howling, they're here. Something began screeching and clawing at the roof of the house. The clawing was deafening as it sounded like it was right above me. So I made decision. I ran down the stairs and knocked Brandon over. Helen grabbed the boiling pot of water and cracked Brandon over the head with it. Brandon screamed in agony as the boiling water was drenched on him. For good measure, I locked the door to the garage. Helen ran to the truck and began trying to start it up, but it wouldn't turn over. Helen kept trying as I drew my handgun and aimed it at the door. Me, Helen? Helen, it won't turn. Fucking hell. Me, runs to her, we don't have time. We have to either hide or fight. Helen, looks at me, hide. Hide where? Me, is there a basement or something? Helen, wait. We can make a break for the cave. It's the only place that's close. The memory of seeing a lifeless Paul came into my head. I didn't want Helen or I to end up like Paul. I can see and feel them tearing me apart. Helen, Alex. Holds my hand, trust me. I nodded in agreement and smiled a little smile before Helen opened the garage door. As it slowly rose up, we could hear the howls even louder as they broke down the front door and made their way to the garage. In that moment, the only thing that ran through my mind was run. Helen and I made a mad dash for the cave entrance, and I could hear a man, possibly Brandon, screaming about something. I could also hear the sound of something following us. I sped up out of fear, and once we entered the cave, I spun around and fired my handgun. What I hit was not a monster, but Ash. Her chest was drenched in blood as she clung to her chest and began to cry out in pain. I felt guilt wash over me, but before I could help her, something dragged her away from us and to the house. She screamed the whole way. I felt responsible for her death. Helen grabbed my hand and dragged me further into the cave. I knew that I couldn't mull over the life I took, but surely it can be an understandable circumstance. I mean, I didn't know it was her, and yet I knew something was following us. What if it was a monster? I could have been mauled, eaten, or Helen could suffer the same fate as me. We turned a corner to find ourselves near a ledge, and just below us was a light. A dim one at that, but we could see nonetheless. I turned to face Helen, who was looking down into the light. Helen, so. It's real. Brandon was right all along. Me, walks over to her, what is this? Glowworms or something. Helen, shakes her head, if only it was so innocent. Do you remember that urban legend called the Hersey Pit? Me, it's a pit that is said to be the place where all heretics are punished. It is said that there are still heretics that dwell below. Helen, the heresy pit has been hidden for years, until someone unblocked the cave. Me, Brandon. Helen, I believe so. He is the one who built the beach house. Not as a retreat or for us rangers. More as an altar to the creatures. To keep them away from the rest of the park, yet since the last death on Trail 4. About a quarter mile from the beach house. Me, why did they kill outside of the beach? Helen, looks at me, I'm not sure, but that's what I suspect is the cause. Me, looks down, what do we do now? A noise came from behind us, the sound of shuffling feet. I aim my handgun at the threshold. Helen follows suit. As the shuffling got louder, the thought of Ash rushed through my mind, but I was mistaken. Brandon stood before us, his eyes bloodshot, face mangled, a broken left arm, a twisted ankle, and scars oozing blood. He stood in the threshold with a wide gate. The silence was deafening. And just before I spoke, he spoke in a raspy voice. Brandon, you will die. As each camper and ranger has before you. The pit shall have its corpse. Maybe two. Looks to Helen. Helen, aims at Brandon as if. Brandon, only Alex is to die tonight. He is marked. Why else would they be chasing you too? Me, marked? How? Brandon, I only had to take a strand of hair and perform the ritual. You have to die. Helen, Brandon. This is far enough. You can't kill him. Brandon, so you can do it yourself? Turns to me, I know you have feelings for this bitch, but she doesn't feel the same way about you. She didn't tell you the full story of the pit. Helen, shut up, Brandon. Brandon, kill a righteous man in the pit and be granted a boon. Anything you desire. For the price of that soul. That is why there are monsters. The corpses of the righteous who lose faith as they die. Me, looks at Helen, is this true? Helen, looks at me and down, yes, but I. Me, you used me. Why? I thought we had something special. Was that a lie too? Helen, it wasn't a lie.
I really do like you, Alex.
I have feelings for you. I just wanted to see my mom one last time. Before she died. Just one more time. I could feel the tears well up in my eyes. Just before I could saw anything, I felt a pain in my chest. A knife. Everything went fuzzy, but I heard a female scream and the ground give way. I felt the earth envelope me as I drifted away into nothingness. Just as I was about to accept fate. Splash. The water was cold as ice, but I could only see darkness. Is this hell? Purgatory? The pit? The pit. I was in the pit, but why? Brandon. He did this. Just as I was about to stand up, I felt my eyes and head begin to burn. The pain was so intense that I could not hold in my screams. As the pain coursed through my eyes, I began to see again. I began to make my way to something I believed to be a shore. The water was heavy, or rather I was weak. The pain subsided once I touched the shore, cold rocks that sparkled with light. I rolled onto my back and looked up to see stalactites, dripping with water and glowing with light. I smiled in amazement at the beauty of it all, but something was with me. Just as I felt this sensation, something surfaced from the water. It was tall and armed with 10 rifles that stretched to unreasonable lengths. Me, well, what do you want? The thing slowly grabs my torso and brings me to it. Its face was non-existent, yet had a head and a large mouth. Its skin a gray and brown color with splotches of blood red. Be not afraid, child of man. The voice was filled with other voices and spoke slowly, yet deeply. Me, what are you? Who are you?
I am a being of flesh and faith.
Put on this earth to beset the fury of God on those who are in a mindset of blasphemy. Me, but I. I know who you are, Alexander. A man of faith and duty, yet fearful of the wrath of God. For you have committed a terrible sin. The slaying of Ash Cromwell. Me, I admit it. I killed her, but it was on accident. I know this. And God will forgive, for a price. Me, price? Slay the murderer Brandon Shawn. Do this act and you will be given a seat in heaven. Refuse. And suffer the same fate as those who fell before you. Me, he put me in here. I will do it. Lifts me to the ledge I bestowed unto you the third eye. May it guide you to your goal, but be warned. The corrupted will see you as prey. Tentacle disappears. May God be with you, child of man. The threshold was shut, but something was placed in the center. I approached the object to see a large lock with a sphere indent in the center. Something in my made me want to put my head on the lock. So I did as I felt, thus the door swung open to reveal the path out. As I walked through the threshold, I looked up to see a winged creature hanging from its feet and looking at me. It didn't seem to notice me, so I made my way out of the cave. Slowly. Just when I was about to exit the cave, I accidentally tripped over a rock and fell with a thud. I didn't even wait for a reaction from the winged creature, I just fucking ran. I had no idea where I was going other than a feeling. A feeling like I'm going the right way, but still lost. Mind you, I had no light and may have hallucinated a tentacle monster after being stabbed. Yet it all seemed too real, the feeling and the witnessing of the tentacle monster. Either out of fear or instinct I ran with the feeling, till I reached a house. I recognized the truck outside. It was Helen's. She had to be inside, but I had to be certain, so I made my way to the house and stalked the outside. Inside was nicely furnished, yet the place seemed too clean. The house was spotless, yet the outside appears that someone doesn't do much yard work. The floors were clean, the kitchen had no dishes out or food laying out, and the dining room table had nothing on it. Then just when I was about to go in, I see the basement door open. Brandon exited the basement with a bucket and something else in his hand. Once I saw him, my feeling intensified to the point it was near blinding. I barely noticed that something got the attention of Brandon. That something was my ticket inside, another creature trying to break in. As Brandon dealt with his new guest, I snuck in and made my way to the basement. The steps creaked with each step, yet it didn't seem to garner any attention from Brandon. Once I reached the floor, my jaw dropped. Helen was tied up to a post and was covered in blood and wounds. One of her eyes was blackened, lip fattened, nose leaking snot and blood, and ligature marks were around her neck. I had no words to speak, but I don't think she could have heard me with her glazed look in her eyes. I hugged her and comforted her, yet I feared that she was near death. I couldn't see anything to help her, only rags with blood on the floor and a light fixture hung from the ceiling. I felt a new emotion well up within me, rage. I was enraged by what had happened to Helen, so I made a dash for the upstairs, yet there stood Brandon. He was soaked on blood and shredded clothing. A look of malice on his face, yet I could sense that he was afraid. Before I could react, I was thrown to the ground. I had been struck. Brandon, standing over me. How did someone like you escape the pit? Me. Well, I have my ways. Brandon then kicked me in the side. A sharp pain rang through my body, as I laid there. I clenched my teeth and was ready for another hit when I heard a familiar phrase. Freeze. Put your hands up, Brandon. Brandon whipped around and charged at the person, so I took the chance and grabbed my handgun. A shot rang out, but it didn't hit Brandon. Brandon had began beating the hell out of the man, but then I pulled the trigger. The bang rang out and down fell Brandon. The shot seemingly hit his spine, crippling the bastard. I staggered up and put a second shot in his temple. He went limp and I made my way to Helen to get her out. The man got up and helped Helen and I out of the house. As soon as I exited the house, everything went black. My body went limp and I was plunged back into the water. The tentacle monster stood in the water with me. Then it spoke to me. Tentacle monster, you have done well, Alexander. Your sins have been forgiven. As promised. Me, what about the monsters? Tentacle monster, the beings will remain. Sadly, there is no cure for heresy, for man will always doubt the Lord. Me, and the pit? Tentacle monster, worry not, Alexander. Your duty is done, but not your life. I wish you all the best, but let me warn you. Never return or you might not be forgiven by God, for he has cursed this land and those who dwell in it. I jolted awake to find myself in a hospital and connected to machines with tubes in my skin. To say that I was confused would be an understatement, yet I would find luck when a doctor/nurse entered my room. Doctor, Alex, glad to see you are finally awake. Begins checking something on a clipboard. Me, thanks. Why am I here? Where is Helen? What? Doctor, you are at St. Cameron Hospital, urgent care facility. Helen is doing well, but that is all I can inform you on. As for what happened to you, sets the clipboard down and focuses his attention on me. You developed a tumor-like growth in your brain, which we removed, and lucky for you it's benign. Me, a tumor? From the P. Doctor, we aren't sure how you got such a tumor, the size of it was dang near a kiwi. It's a mystery how you couldn't feel any pain, from how it was positioned you could have grown a third eye. Chuckles. Me, so what happens now, doctor? Doctor, you are free to go home, Alex. You will take some meds and come back in 3 weeks for a checkup to ensure you don't have any more growths. Doctor walks out. As I began getting dressed, Helen walks in and looks around to see if anyone is in the room with me. She walks over to me and leans in to whisper something into my ear. Helen, the FBI is here and wants to talk to you, but I don't know if it's such a good idea. I mean, more of them could have ended up like footsteps in the hall. Me, someone has to know. It can't remain a secret forever, because nothing is holding them back. It will just repeat the cycle, possibly with the whole town. Thus I'm willing to take a chance if it means preventing it from spreading. Helen hugs me and squeezes gently. I'm with you. Smiles. 2 FBI agents enter my room, and before I could greet them, it was time for business. After hearing both stories, they seemed to be perplexed and still not grasping at the full picture. Then Helen made a suggestion. Helen, perhaps we could show you the evidence. The words of the tentacle monster rang in my head, but I knew that the only way to stop its spread would be to go back to that cave and confront it. Only this time, I may not return.